industry as a whole had a huge contraction within that period of the lockdown of economies. It really affected mostly companies that are dependent on international projects, like we all know. Lots of offices were closed down. A lot of researchers lost their job during the process. I know of most of the top research firms that had to downsize up to 60% of their workforce, which is very impactful. Lots of big corporate clients, they missed out on their payment terms. So as a result, there was a cash crunch in the finances of most research firms.
I'll start with the fact that a lot of agencies started exploring digital platforms. We started having online focus group discussions, started having consumer panels. Consumer panels existed before the pandemic, but there was more usage of panels, consumer panels, online panels, where you have a group of respondents put in a particular group, and then whenever there is a study or there is a project, you just go into that group and pick respondents that fit or suit the particular project. So digital platforms generally were explored. It pushed a lot of companies to start having the digital phase.
Have different existing methodologies that were not really viable prior to the COVID pandemic. One of the major ones was telephone interviewing. There were a lot of significant investment in call centers among research firms, but they were not in use. But when the pandemic started, a lot of face-to-face interviewing studies were converted into telephoning interview. And one of the major challenge faced was how to gather interviewers in the same room. So there was a shift from having a central call center to having interviewers work from home. So technology companies had to quickly upgrade their platform to allow interviewers work from home and make calls. Then one of the critical challenges that we faced then was how do we get viable telephone numbers? Due to strong partnerships that we have with telecom companies in our markets, we had to activate those agreements to get real life numbers of respondents that we can speak to on a regular basis to be able to accommodate our client requests and to get feedbacks.
It was easier to do physical interviews as compared to online, because in our climb we have that bias, security bias, because we've had different instances where people were defrauded, people were funny phone calls. We've had different situations where we've had funny phone calls. So if people were wary of a number just coming, calling them randomly and saying, I want to conduct an interview, a lot of people were a bit wary. So if we saw them physically, we could convince them, body language and all. But in a telephonic interview, there is no way you can read body language, especially for qualitative interviews where everything about the respondent is supposed to be looked at in terms of their response to your question. So I think physical would always trump online method in our climb, and because when it is physical, you have their attention, but when it is online, they can be doing different other things, and then their attention will not be 100% put into the research. So basically, I think physical seem to trump online methods in our climb.
prior to the pandemic period, the adoption level of online purchase ranged between 25 to 30%. Like I said, between 25 to 30%. But we saw an upsurge to up to 75%. So lots of consumers in West Africa prefer to purchase their essential products online, and they are more willing to pay for delivery charges. So another point is that prior to the pandemic, most consumers buy and purchase goods for 2 or 3 days consumption. But when the pandemic started, people had to stock up food for up to a month because they were not so sure of when the lockdown will be lifted. So as a result of that, that really changed the dynamics of consumer purchase behavior and the volume of goods that they purchase when they go shopping.
That question is a very tricky one, but roughly the pandemic has stirred a change in lifestyle, basically, and people have, like you mentioned earlier, purchased more of sanitary things that will sanitizers and different things that will keep them safe or help them to ward off the COVID-19 virus. So I think we now see a lot of people wearing masks, as before now there was nothing like mask. So mask has now become part of the fashion for a lot of people. Then the government have tried to ensure that sitting in transport systems is such that it observes the safety measures and so the social distancing and all. They've done their best, though in certain places it looks like they don't even care, or they are not even they are not even wary of the pandemic situation. But all in all, people have been wearing their mask, and government have ensured that there is social distances in the transport system, basically. So I think people have to some extent observed some sort of safety measures and carrying hand sanitizers everywhere.
Some of our studies in the open market, especially in places where they trade 2 or 3 times in a week, that social distancing was not observed. So you go to a store, if you want to enter the store, it's compulsory that you put on your mask. But when you are walking along the streets of places like markets, shopping areas, we find it very difficult I find it very difficult to believe that they observe social distancing. Some of the tracking studies that we've done on consumer spending, we discovered that most consumers, especially in commercial cities, spend up to 75% of their income on food. So we've seen that food prices has gone up significantly. So you can imagine a consumer spending 75% of his or her income on food. There will be little or nothing left for such a person to pay for transportation or pay for other essential goods. So from our projections and some of the opinion polls that we've done, we don't see that coming down any soon, even judging by some of the increase in like energy costs by the federal government of Nigeria. And recently too, the prices of fuel now increased from 148 naira to about 160 naira. So with that, coupled with the structure of our transport system, I don't see it coming down. I don't see people observing social distancing in public transportation infrastructure in the next 6 months to 1 year. Web Haptic Intelligence as a business has clearly followed the guidelines provided by the Nigerian federal government on safety in workplaces, especially during this pandemic period. One of the things that we did was to come up with a roster of staff attendance. So 50% of our staff were working from home, and we Also, during the period, had to extend our office facilities to accommodate the large and growing number of staff that we have, so that they can maintain appropriate distance of recommended by the federal government. We also followed the guidelines provided by the Market Research Society UK that give an idea of how research, face-to-face research, is to be conducted by interviewers. So we also ensure that at our reception is provided hand sanitizer and nose masks for everybody coming into our business premises. For our focus group facility, we made sure that all our respondents are properly their temperature. We check their temperature before coming into our facility, and we provide them with nose mask and sanitizer as well. Then in terms of spacing and distancing, we've tried to reduce the number of respondents that we accommodate from 8 to 6, so that they can maintain appropriate distance within our focus group facility. Judging by the impact that we've seen, there is this philosophy that businesses and individuals have. We try to overestimate what sort of changes will happen in the nearest time, and we underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10 years. One of the trends, like my colleague has highlighted before, that there is a migration from traditional research to lots of online and technology-driven methodologies. Yes, that has come to stay. But recently, in the last few weeks, we've been seeing people now migrating back to face-to-face research because of the nature of our own markets, where not all the respondents are accessible either by phone or have access to internet due to the level of our internet penetration. So that's one of the things that we'll see, that people are going to, that agencies are going to migrate back to their old system. Then the other thing we've seen I've seen as a business owner, is that there are a lot of agencies springing up. Like I said when I answered during the first question, I highlighted that a lot of professional and corporate researchers lost their job. So these guys are not looking to go back into their old firm. So what they have done is to team up to set up their own research agencies. So there will be first competition. That's number one. Then the other thing that we've seen is drop in clients' requirements. Clients will still want to pursue the same objectives with the same budget. So we've seen contraction in budget size from clients, drop in sample sizes. Like we have one of our big clients that used to maintain a certain size. With the job that they commissioned, they had to reduce the sample size by 50 just to maintain the cost. Another thing is that we should also note that there is rising costs of running research activities. So margins are going to definitely drop. Another important thing that we've seen is, due to the structure of our market, 80% of most of research projects are commissioned from outside our market, while the 20% are being commissioned locally by local clients. So we've seen a significant drop from projects being commissioned from outside. So we project internally that would drop from 80 to 70 or 65%, while the internal clients will definitely increase.
One of the major change it would have, especially in our client, is the fact that purchasing power has reduced because a lot of people have lost their jobs, and so consumers will be looking for cheaper alternatives in terms of products and services. But they would also have in the same basket, they will be looking for products that are also safe. They will be also watching out for brands that are trusted and brands that have shown concern, especially during the pandemic. So basically, purchasing power, so cheaper options would be explored by consumers. Then they would also be looking at trusted brands, because a lot of brands took the advantage of the pandemic to show that they care about the consumers, not just about their money but also about their well-being. So there will be a lot of shifting from brands that were not empathic to brands that were more accommodating in terms of safety measures and what have you. And then also we are going to see some sort of rise in consumers making purchases, but rather than appearing physically, they would have the goods delivered to them. So in fact, recently there's been a surge in delivery services. Logistics companies have taken advantage of the pandemic. So I think that may be sustained over a period of time till when the pandemic seems to be over, and then people can now go and freely buy products and services physically. So basically, I think those are the things that I think would happen to the consumer.
The federal government of Nigeria has done quite a lot trying to stimulate the economy to bounce back. Although not all the sectors of the economy is currently active, one of which is the education sector. We expect that to come on stream before the end of this month of September. The government has also done it in such a way to try to ban the importation of some of the goods that can be locally produced, one of which is maize. So the Central Bank of Nigeria has done it in such a way that forex is now available for the importation of maize. So that will help stimulate the local industry, and it will also help create jobs for farmers and associated companies in that value chain. So that will help stimulate the economy. Then the other part that I think the government should work on is to help solidify some of the success gained during the pandemic. So we saw during the pandemic that we have a lot of gap in our health sector. So we expect the government to pump in more funds into that sector, and as a result, it will help reduce brain drain, because most of our doctors are leaving the country to countries in Europe and in the US. So with that, we expect that things should bounce back to normal in the next before the end of the year. As a company, we don't work in isolation. We work closely with our clients to deliver value for every amount of money being spent. So in terms of investment as a company, over the last, even prior to this pandemic, we've invested significantly in technology. Webaptic Intelligence Limited is always committed to innovation, as we all know. In the quantitative front, we have an online panel with over 50,000 respondents. We are growing that and improving the user interface of our online panel to have up to around 60 to 70,000 in the next 2 months. In the qualitative end, our online focus group platform is being upgraded to accommodate lots of multiple studies, and the CTO that we hired created a roadmap with the leadership of the business to ensure that we fully transition the company from traditional research to fully online research in the next 6 months to 1 year.